You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. It's a lot of people are not happy at all with the speech that President Joe Biden gave yesterday. Charlemagne the God gave him Donkey of the Day on the Breakfast Club this morning. Cliff Albright has been extremely critical of that particular speech because he didn't even bring up Senator Sinema or Manchin, didn't even mention the filibuster. And so this is what's going on. And I was sitting here looking at this. Here's one of the tweets. Go to my computer here. This is what Cliff tweeted. It does little good for POTUS to give a speech emphasizing the history of civil rights battles while absolutely ignoring the role the filibuster has played historically and how it's blocking voting rights today. Historian Kevin Cruz tweeted this: filibuster against Civil Rights Bill 1874, filibuster against Civil Rights Bill 1875, filibuster against a pension for a black official in 1906, filibuster against confirmation of a black official in 1909, and then he had filibuster against anti-lynching bill 1921, filibuster against anti-lynching bill 1922, filibuster against anti-lynching bill 1925, filibuster against monument to black World War I veterans 1926, filibuster against anti-lynching bill 1935, against anti-lynching bill 1938, against bill targeting racial discrimination in unemployment 1945, filibuster against Truman's civil rights proposals 1948. He then filibuster against Truman's civil rights proposals 1949, 1950, against measures to fight housing discrimination 1954, against the civil rights bill 1957, against the civil rights bill 1960, 1962, 1963, 1964, 1966, 1968, 1972, against Civil Rights Bill 1976, against extending the Voting Rights Act 1982, against the creation of the MLK Day federal holiday 1983, against Civil Rights Bill 1984, on and on.
Well, what I think President Biden has to do is exert some real presidential leadership. He was elected kind of as this LBJ figure, this figure who is a master of the Senate, who knows every hallway inside the Dirksen building, so to say. But we have not seen the type of legislative pressure that LBJ put out in 1964 that Joe Biden could put out right now in 2021. This is crucial. And I know the argument is always, well, what's going to happen if you eliminate the filibuster when Republicans get back in power? Let's look at the numbers and just be for real right here. The 50 Republican senators represent 41 million fewer people than the 50 Democratic senators. Republicans have not won a popular vote in a national election since 2004. So if you have a 17-year-old sitting here listening right now, they have never in their lifetime seen a Republican win the popular vote. Indeed, they won the popular vote one time in the last 30 years. So if you have a 30-year-old, they've only seen a Republican win the popular vote one time in their lifetime. So this idea that somehow they will be able to bounce back and take back over power is not evidenced by history. They do not have the numbers. Without voter suppression, they have no ability to win elections. We're seeing this in Georgia, where suddenly for the first time in a decade, Democrats won 2 statewide seats, and they immediately changed the voting laws. We see this in Texas right now in the instant case, where Democrats are making inroads and in many of the statewide elections, or may be able to challenge for a Senate seat coming up, so you have to change the voting laws. So Democrats have to get off their butts. They have to act the same way the Republicans are doing. Republicans can lose an election by 8 million votes and then tour the country for the next year claiming that they won. Democrats can win the election and still act like they lost. They're going to have to get some real strong presidential leadership, put some pressure on these people. Kyrsten Sinema out west, I guarantee you start pulling some highway funding, pulling some water funding from her state, she'll get on board. Joe Manchin right there in the Rust Belt, you start closing down military bases in his state, I guarantee he'll get on board. We have to take a tough line with these people. Otherwise, they will compromise you right out of office and right out of power.
This year was, one of the things that, if you understand what's going on here, Ron Brownstein has a piece out, Scott, and then this is what he wrote. The repeated White House suggestion that voters, especially voters of color, can overcome these restrictive laws with more effort has infuriated civil rights activists. They say it deflects responsibility from the real issue, whether Biden and the Senate Dems are making enough effort to pass new legislation.
Yeah, I agree. The speech was quite weak. And the disappointment in Biden is that he's committed, but he seems like he's this willing prisoner of the filibuster, willing prisoner of losing Manchin and the Arizona senator who may go to be Republican. But for black people, this is everything. And you don't get a sense from Biden that it means everything. He still thinks he can cut a deal. Well, tell us what deal you can cut. Or tell us how you're going to hammer those two senators on the Democratic side who support the filibuster. Because otherwise, you're a willing prisoner of the system, and the system has never been helpful to black people. So what are you going to do to hammer them? What are you going to do to avoid the filibuster or overcome it? What are you going to do to craft something to get through, get it approved, so that we can vote and get criminal justice reform, get legislation against voter suppression and what have you? But if you're not willing to do that, then you're not down to do that. And so for black people, it's everything, and the future's now. Robert can talk about the future and votes and how we can win and so forth and so on. But the bottom line is Democrats don't have the votes right now. There's only so much Biden can do unless he's going to put it all on the line. And he needs to show America and show black people he's willing to do that. To date, he certainly hasn't crossed that line to give it his all.
Robert, Ron Brownstein also shared another tweet from Cliff Albright. This is what he said. Don't come relying on activists to out-organize voter suppression to compensate for your legislative failures. This ain't the Green Mile or Bagger Vance, and we're not your magical Negroes covering up your broken promises. Cliff ain't holding back, Robert.
He's 100% correct. Let's understand, we are expecting Democrat or activists and people on the ground and nonprofit groups not just to win elections, but to win by landslides just to barely win. So we have to overcome all of the voter suppression. We have to overcome voter ID. We have to overcome changing polling locations. We have to overcome many of these schemes and what Reverend Jackson calls tricky leaks, which are used to suppress the vote in many states. We have to overcome all that. Even when you do, like we did in Georgia, as most deaths say, you start keeping pace, they start switching up the tempo on you, and they change the rules right under you. You have to have federal oversight. The reason that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was so crucial is because the right to vote is dispositive of all other rights. Nothing else you do matters unless you have a vote. Nothing else, no other legislative package that you pass matters unless you are able to secure the right to vote for African Americans or for black and brown people in this country, because otherwise in 2022, if they take back the House, or in 2024, if they take back the White House, they can reverse everything if you don't secure the vote first. And it's not this sexy issue. I understand that. It's not the thing you toured the country on. But I understand it's just us lowly old black folks wanting to have a voice in politics. And that's not the sexy thing that gets you on billboards, and that's good for re-election campaign ads in many areas. But it is the one thing that will secure our democracy going forward and prevent the rise of the authoritarians. The people who stormed the Capitol are in the minority. That's why they're trying to stop us from voting.
Folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Racial injustice is a scourge on this nation, and the black community has felt it for generations. We have an obligation to do something about it. Whether it's canceling student debt, increasing the minimum wage, or investing in black-owned businesses, the black community deserves so much better. I'm Nina Turner, and I'm running for Congress to do something about it.